The U.S. president states he's never had so many European leaders visit at one time. And this while Ukrainian President Zelensky is also slated to meet Trump on Monday. We'll get you all the details on that story.
This is Zelensky's. Last time he came to Washington was in February, having that Oval Office showdown with Trump. This time he's come with a lot of European allies. Also on the show, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is set to kick off his 3-day visit to India. During his stay, he will hold a meeting with External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. He's also scheduled to meet Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Tuesday. We'll bring you all the updates. Let's start with the headlines.
U.S. President Donald Trump dismisses what he calls fake news that he suffered a major defeat by allowing his Russian counterpart to have a major summit in U.S. Says Putin would have loved doing the meeting anywhere but the U.S.
Big team.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky hails the United States' offer of security guarantees, calls it a historic decision ahead of his meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump.
My hope is that President Trump will see, in hindsight, that President Putin is just trying to take us all for a ride, to keep this war going, keep attacking Ukraine without facing additional pressure.
Former U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan expresses hope that after the Alaska summit, Donald Trump sees that Russian President Vladimir Putin is taking everyone for a ride. He adds that the Biden administration had determined Putin is not serious about ending the war in Ukraine.
Hamas rejects Israel's Gaza relocation plan, says it constitutes a new wave of genocide and displacement for hundreds of thousands of residents in the area.
Tens of thousands of demonstrators hit the streets in Tel Aviv calling for an ending to the war in Gaza, the release of hostages marking one of the largest demonstrations in Israel since the start of the war in October 2023.
Exit polls show two right-wing candidates have qualified for the Bolivia presidential runoff, topping the first round of elections on Sunday, ending 2 decades of leftist rule.
U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi announces arrest of 68 people overnight in Washington, D.C. as part of a federal crackdown on crime ordered by President Trump.
Indian consulate in New York celebrates India's 79th Independence Day with the annual India Day Parade. New York City Mayor Eric Adams, Member of Parliament Satnam Singh Sandhu attend the event.
Oil prices dipped after the U.S. held back from tougher actions on Russian exports following Friday's meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Crude saw modest declines.
Jon Rahm wins his second consecutive Live Golf season crown. The Spaniard lost to Sebastian Munoz in the playoff at Indianapolis, but it was enough to secure the overall title.
We begin with some breaking news just coming in. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky could choose to end the war with Russia almost immediately, but retaking Russian-occupied Crimea or joining NATO are off the table.
In a post on Truth Social, Trump wrote, "Not getting back Obama-given Crimea and no going into NATO by Ukraine." He added that some things never change. The posts come on the eve of a White House meeting with the Ukrainian president and European leaders. Talking about the meeting, Trump said that it is a big day at the White House, adding that the White House has never had so many European leaders at one time.
All right, to give us more details, our correspondent Susan Terani is joining us on the phone. Susan, again, a big thing from Trump, saying that he now has clarified on the territorial, topics that, of course, Obama given Crimea they're not getting it back. Of course, NATO has been mentioned. Ukraine will not get into NATO. What is the latest that you can bring in?
Right. I assume that he's making these comments, of course, ahead of that crucial meeting, not only with Zelensky, but with European leaders. They had a press conference today. The head of the EU, Ursula von der Leyen, was saying that there will be no land concessions. The Ukrainian president and European leaders, they're now pressing for negotiation to be based on an immediate ceasefire and not an outright territorial swap, insisting that Ukraine must be involved in any deal, particularly one affecting its sovereignty. However, it appears that also reports indicate that a draft deal might include Ukraine ceding parts of Donetsk and Luhansk and possibly other occupied regions in exchange for some kind of Article 5 style security guarantees from the United States and European allies as a substitute for full NATO membership. So these were the reports that came out today. This is according to Steve Witkoff, the special envoy who spoke on the Sunday shows today, and Marco Rubio as well. They're not giving more away about what they'll be presenting to Zelensky and the Europeans and what they discussed with Russia. But this is the context that we have. And it appears that President Trump is trying to make clear that the ball is now in Ukraine's court. Of course, Ukraine is in a very peculiar position right now. But there were also reports, again, just a backstory, that Zelensky is saying there is no way I'm giving up any inch of land. And so then the question remains, why are you coming to the United States? So it's sort of very fluid, but appears the context seems to be what we know of this, and that's why President Trump decided to put out this Truth Social post. I guess we'll soon find out tomorrow after the meeting or during the meeting.
We'll need to wait for the developments to come in from that meeting. Susan, thanks so much for getting us that perspective. You've raised some pertinent points here, and let's discuss this further with our guest who's joining us here on the broadcast. We're now being joined by Dr. Charles Kupchan. He's a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. Dr. Kupchan, thanks so much for making time for us and joining us here on the broadcast. Let's get right into it. Susan mentioned something very important, that if Zelensky is not willing to make any kind of concessions, why is he on his way to the US? It makes one thing very clear, that all these European leaders coming at once within a day of that Alaska summit, it clearly means Europe and Ukraine, as expected, have not slept well since those developments came out after the Alaska summit. As of now, what do you expect from this meeting and from the regarding concessions as well?
No question that Europeans and Zelensky himself are very anxious about what took place in Alaska and the terms of the deal that today we're hearing more and more about. You know, I think that there are several key issues that are going to be under discussion. One of them you just mentioned, and that is Zelensky going to be willing to cede the 30% of Donetsk Oblast that Russia wants, but that Ukraine still controls? Will Putin agree to allow the Ukraine that exists on the other side of that ceasefire line, which is now about 80% of the country, to be a free, independent, and secure country with security guarantees provided by some coalition of the willing. What do those security guarantees look like, and will they be credible? And I think the nub of the issue is the following. No question that Zelensky does not want to give up any more land. Many, many tens of thousands of Ukrainians have died to protect those portions of Donbass that Putin is asking for. But if Zelensky has reason to believe that this war will end in a durable way, then it is possible that he may say, okay, I don't like this, but I'm going to let this land swap take place in the service of bringing the death and destruction to an end. Will he go down that road? Let's see tomorrow.
We'll need to wait
Absolutely. And it's interesting because now we're also looking at, last time Zelensky was there, he was alone. Now he has a whole party of European leaders. It would have been a G7 summit if not for Finnish present at that point. So according to you, how is the European leaders are going to, what kind of role are they going to be playing here? Especially regarding the security guarantees in NATO.
You know, I think everybody remembers with a certain amount of horror the meeting that took place several months ago when Trump threw Zelensky out of the Oval Office and then stopped the flow of intelligence and military assistance. And so I think these, the Europeans are coming to say, we have Zelensky's back, we're with Zelensky, don't make a deal over his head. If Zelensky doesn't say yes, you have no deal. And remember, Mr. Trump, a bad deal is worse than no deal. It's a unified voice coming from Europeans. This is extraordinary. 7 different leaders are coming to participate and to back Zelensky. And I think the bottom line is here that they don't know what to expect from Trump. He changes his mind every 15 minutes. They thought that he had ended up in a good place, that he was ready to impose sanctions on Russia, that he was ready to approve the flow of military assistance to Ukraine. And then all of a sudden he announces a meeting face-to-face on American soil with the Russian president. And so they don't know what Trump is going to say in the next 15 minutes. And as a consequence, they want to be there to make clear what their position is on this critical issue for European security.
And Dr. Kapchin, very quickly, I also want to get your thoughts on this. Till now, NATO was off the table. We heard that enough number of times, but now it's been made clear from the US president that Crimea is also off the table because that is something, Crimea is one region that Ukraine has been fighting for continuously all through these last 10 years, I would say, or 2014 since then. But at this point, do you feel that's also a hint into what to expect regarding the land concessions, which Putin kind of hinted at? He said our root causes need to be addressed. So Putin is right where he was at 2022. Trump is now suggesting Crimea is also off the table. And it's almost an emergency meeting with all these European leaders reaching. This is unprecedented. It's extraordinary, as you said as well. Is this heading in that direction, that land concessions is the only way?
I think that Trump in some ways is just being realistic. Are the Ukrainians going to be able to take back Crimea by force? No. Are they going to be able to expel the Russians from Donbass? No. So let's just admit it, try to end the war, and make sure that the Ukraine that's on the other side of the ceasefire line is a secure, sovereign republic that is able to make its own decisions about the future. And Zelensky's willingness to say yes to the deal depends a lot on the guarantees that emerge to provide Ukraine security, because Zelensky's never going to trust Putin, even if Putin signs something that says, I won't attack you again. And so let's pay a lot of attention to the nature of those guarantees. It's not NATO, but it's going to be something else. We need more clarity on what that something else is before we can say this is a good deal or this is a bad deal.
And the world is seeming to now inch towards accepting that reality, that perhaps that's going to be the only way to end this war, getting Russia, a powerhouse like Russia, out by force doesn't really seem to be the option that at least Ukraine has at this point. And also along with that, the Alaska summit came out of nowhere for the European leaders. Putin comes in at the end and says, let's have the follow-up meeting in Moscow, and you have all the European leaders rushing to Washington within a day's time. Clearly, Europe is not at peace at this point. Let's just leave it at that, and we'll wait to watch.
I would say a certain level of panic would be the right word.
I think that's the right word as well. Dr. Kapchan, thanks so much for joining us and, using the right terminology, I would say. Panic is the word we should be using for the European leaders.
Yes.
Dr. Kapchan, always a pleasure speaking with you, and there will be lots more to discuss. Would love to have you on Worldian again.
Good to be with you. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Let's shift our focus now to West Asia. Palestinian militant group Hamas has accused Israel of orchestrating a new wave of genocide and displacement as the Israeli military prepare to relocate residents from Gaza City.
Hamas dismissed Israel's so-called humanitarian effort to relocate Gazans to safety, calling it a blatant deception. It termed Israel's deployment of tents and shelter equipment in southern Gaza an impending crime.
Israeli military announced plans to push deeper into northern Gaza, particularly Gaza City, the enclave's largest urban center, drawing sharp criticism from both inside and outside the country.
Tens of thousands of demonstrators gathered in Tel Aviv chanting "Stop the war and bring the hostages back home now." Among the demonstrators was President Isaac Herzog, who called the hostages the most important issue.
I'm here to say to the international media and to the international decision makers, our sons and daughters are there in the dungeons of Gaza for 681 days. We want them back home as soon as possible. The world should want them back home as soon as possible.
A symbolic mock wedding added emotional weight to the protest. Former hostage Ilana Gredzewski staged the ceremony in memory of her partner Matan Zangaoker, who is still held in Gaza. Wearing a white gown, Ilana walked the aisle alongside Matan's mother, carrying a message of hope and urgency.
Matan, my curls, my love, I love you. I am fighting for you until you return, until you and all the hostages come back. We will bring you back alive and rebuild together. And with God's help, we will build our Jewish home here in Israel.
According to the Hostage and Missing Families Forum, nearly 500,000 people joined Sunday's demonstrations. The protests followed a day of national strikes, road blockades and clashes with police. Over 30 people were arrested.
Demonstrators call for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to reach a deal with Hamas and bring an end to the conflict. Netanyahu, on the other hand, criticized the demonstrators, claiming they were strengthening Hamas's hand.
We will come back in a few minutes.
In Iraq, authorities have begun the grim task of excavating one of the country's largest mass graves near Mosul.
Now, this is a site believed to hold thousands of victims of the Islamic State. The Kasfa sinkhole, that's long shrouded in horror and secrecy, is now yielding evidence of atrocities committed during this rule. Take a look. U.S., a late-night party in Brooklyn turned tragic when gunfire broke out inside a nightclub.
New York police says that at least 3 people were killed and 8 others were injured. The shooting took place at the Taste of the City lounge in Crown Heights, where police say a dispute inside the venue escalated rapidly into violence. Authorities reported that emergency crews rushed the 8 injured individuals to nearby hospitals, and doctors confirmed their injuries were not life-threatening. Investigators have identified 2 of the victims as a 27-year-old man and a 35-year-old man, while the third victim has not yet been fully identified.
Currently, we have identified 11 victims ranging in age from 27 to 61, 8 males and 3 females. 3 of the victims have already been pronounced: 1 male age 27, 1 male age 35, and 1 male of an unknown age. The 8 remaining victims are at local area hospitals with what is being described right now as non-life-threatening injuries.
New York City Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch stated that the incident started as an argument but quickly turned into a barrage of bullets when multiple gunmen opened fire. Officers continue to search for those responsible, but so far no arrests have been made.
What we know preliminarily is that there was a dispute inside of the crowded club that led to the shooting. We have multiple shooters involved in this shooting, and we have recovered at least 36 shell casings so far from what appears to be multiple guns.
The latest shooting incident adds to the growing concerns about gun violence in New York City and in the US overall. Earlier this month, a gunman opened fire near a crowded intersection in Times Square, injuring 3 people. Such events have left many residents unsettled about the rising number of such attacks. The Indian consulate in New York celebrated India's 79th Independence Day.
Now, they were organizing the annual India Day parade. The parade was attended by several dignitaries: New York City Mayor Eric Adams, including Congressperson Shri Thanedan and Member of Parliament Satnam Singh Sandhu. New York City Mayor Eric Adams said New York, just like India, thrives on diversity. The India Day event underscored how culture and togetherness make the city stronger.
In Pennsylvania's Scranton, Consul Mahesh Yadav joined the festivities organized by the Indo-American community. The event saw the presence of State Senator Marty Flynn, Razin Karu from the Governor's Office, Dr. Vithalbhai Dhaduk, along with several representatives from Scranton.
Organized by the Federation of Indian Association, known as the FIA, for over 4 decades, the India Day Parade returned to New York City on Sunday, bringing together vibrant floats, spirited marching groups, food stalls, and cultural performances in one grand spectacle. This year's theme, May All Be Happy. What it does, it promotes unity and well-being across communities, with inaugural participation from Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, Christian, and Jain floats. A first for the parade. Now stealing the show as co-grand marshals have been 2 big India cinema stars, Rashmika Mandana and Vijay Deverakonda, whose presence brought a celebrity charm to the festivities. Adding to the excitement, the Empire State Building was illuminated this past Friday in India's tricolors as a prelude to parade celebrations. Now, this annual event has steadily grown since its launch back in 1981 and is recognized as the largest India Day celebration outside of India, drawing Indian Americans and South Asian New Yorkers together in unity and festivity. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
Now, crisis at Air Canada intensified after the airline's cabin crew union said that it will remain on strike and defy the Canadian government's order to return to work.
Now, this comes after Air Canada, the country's largest airline, announced resumption of flights after a government order directed over 10,000 members of the airline to resume work. The feud goes back to disputes over terms of a new contract between the airline and the cabin crew union. Last week, the union had turned down the airline's request to enter into government-directed arbitration, and this would have allowed a third-party mediator to decide the terms of a new contract. Air Canada and the Canadian Union of Public Employees have been negotiating a new contract for 8 months, but are yet to reach a tentative deal.
The union's core demand has centered on compensation for non-flight duties. Cabin crew are currently paid primarily for time when the aircraft is in motion, but not for periods spent on the ground assisting passengers during boarding or between flights. The Canadian Union of Public Employees has argued that this unpaid labor represents a significant fairness issue for thousands of employees.
The standoff has led to the suspension of around 700 daily flights, stranding over 100,000 passengers. And according to Air Canada, flight operations could remain disrupted for the next 7 to 10 days.
Now it's time for a very short break on World DNA. We have lots lined up on the other side. We begin with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who is set to kick off his 3-day visit to India. The foreign minister is scheduled to meet Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We'll get you all the details on the other side.
The BJP-led National Democratic Alliance, or NDA, in India has announced Maharashtra Governor C.P. Radhakrishnan as the vice presidential candidate for the upcoming polls. We'll bring you the latest on that as well. This and a lot more lined up for you when World DNA returns. Come right back.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to WION Health Resort. Make your reservation at wion.com.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with Jyotsna. I'm Shivan. Lots more to discuss. Let's start with the headlines.
U.S. President Donald Trump says that Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky could choose to end the war with Russia almost immediately, but retaking Russian-occupied Crimea or joining NATO are off the table.
Hamas rejects Israel's Gaza relocation plan, says it constitutes a new wave of genocide and displacement for hundreds of thousands of residents in the area.
Tens of thousands of demonstrators hit the streets in Tel Aviv calling for an end to the war in Gaza and the release of hostages, marking one of the largest demonstrations in Israel since the start of the war in October 2023.
Ukrainian President Zelensky hails the United States' offer of security guarantees, calls it a historic decision ahead of his meeting with US President Donald Trump.
Exit polls show two right-wing candidates have qualified for Bolivia presidential runoff, topping the first round of elections on Sunday and in 2 decades of leftist rule.
US Attorney General Pam Bondi announces arrest of 68 people overnight in Washington, D.C. as part of a federal crackdown on crime ordered by President Trump.
Indian consulate in New York celebrates India's 79th Independence Day with the annual India Day parade. New York City Mayor Eric Adams, Member of Parliament Satnam Singh Sandhu attend the event.
Asian markets edge higher ahead of key US interest rate decisions this week, while oil prices slipped as risks to Russian supplies seemed to fade a little.
John Ram wins his second consecutive LIV Golf season crown. The Spaniard lost to Sebastian Munoz in the playoff at Indianapolis, but it was enough to secure the overall title.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is set to kick off his 3-day visit to India.
Now, during his stay, he will be holding a meeting with External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and is scheduled to meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Tuesday.
Now, this will be the second visit of the Chinese Foreign Minister to India since 2020, since the Galwan clashes, the last being in March 2022. One of the main highlights of the visit will be the 24th round of border talks at the special representatives level.
The Chinese foreign minister will engage with India's national security advisor Ajit Doval to discuss the long-standing issues along the line of factual control. The last round of these talks was held in Beijing in December last year. As part of ongoing efforts to reset ties, both countries are also expected to discuss the sharing of river water data, the resumption of direct air connectivity, and increased exchanges between media and think tanks.
Additionally, the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra resumed this year after a long suspension, signaling a move to revive people-to-people ties as diplomatic relations improve between China and India. The visit follows a series of high-level engagements between India and China. Earlier this year, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh and External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar, they had all travelled to China for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meetings.
China, which holds the SCO presidency this year, will host the summit from August 31st to September 1st, with Prime Minister Narendra Modi expected to attend. In January, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri also visited Beijing, reflecting the continued diplomatic dialogue between the two countries.
Relations between India and China remain tense following the Galwan clashes. New Delhi has always been concerned about Beijing's close ties with Pakistan, particularly its support for cross-border terrorism. Wang Yi's visit is being closely monitored as both countries look to manage tensions and explore ways to stabilize bilateral relations.
Now, BJP-led National Democratic Alliance, or NDA, has announced Maharashtra Governor C.P. Radhakrishnan as the vice presidential candidate for the upcoming polls.
And this comes weeks after Jagdeep Dhankar's resignation from the post, citing health reasons. The announcement was made by BJP National President and Union Minister J.P. Nadda soon after the parliamentary board meeting at party's headquarters in New Delhi. Now, this meeting was called to finalize the party's choice for the vice presidential election.
सभी के साथ चर्चा हुई, सुझाव मांगे गए और उसके बाद फिर ये तय हुआ कि हमारे उपराष्ट्रपति के प्रत्याशी के रूप में हमारे महाराष्ट्र के राज्यपाल श्री C.P. राधाकृष्णन जी, चंद्रपुरम पुन्नासामी राधाकृष्णन जी, उनको हम NDA का प्रत्याशी बनाएंगे.
With over 4 decades of experience in politics and governance, C.P. Radhakrishnan is widely seen as a seasoned leader. Born in the South Indian state of Tamil Nadu, Radhakrishnan is a 2-time Lok Sabha MP from Coimbatore and held key parliamentary roles. He was part of parliamentary delegation to UNGA in 2004 and first Indian delegation to Taiwan as well.
Later in Tamil Nadu, he rose to prominence as the state BJP president, followed by his stint as BJP's All India in charge for Kerala from 2020 to 2022. In 2023, he was appointed governor of Jharkhand, and in July 2024, he took charge as the governor of Maharashtra.
Sharing a post on X, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said he is glad that the NDA family has decided to nominate C.P. Radhakrishnan as the vice presidential candidate of the alliance. PM Modi added that he is confident of him becoming an inspiring vice president.
Jagdeep Dhankar resigned from the post of India's vice president on the 21st of July, citing health reasons. His term was to end in August of 2027.
Point of order.
ECI, the Election Commission of India, has lashed out at the opposition over vote theft allegations.
The poll body has slammed Congress MP Rahul Gandhi for attempting to mislead voters by spreading misinformation and creating fear. Addressing a media briefing in New Delhi this afternoon, the Chief Election Commissioner Ganesh Kumar stated that the poll body was being used as a launchpad to target India's voters for political motives. The remarks come days after Rahul Gandhi unveiled what he had described as an atom bomb of evidence against the Election Commission.
Gandhi alleged large-scale vote theft in Karnataka's Mahadevpura assembly segment, claiming over 1 lakh votes were stolen through methods such as duplicate entries, fake addresses and bulk registrations at single addresses. Reacting to it, the Election Commission now says that the Congress leader has no third option but to provide an affidavit or apologize to the nation.
जब चुनाव आयोग के कंधे पर बंदूक रखकर भारत के मतदाताओं को निशाना बनाकर राजनीति की जा रही हो और मेरे सारे मतदाताओं को अपराधी बनाना और चुनाव आयोग शांत रहे, संभव नहीं। हलफनामा देना होगा या देश से माफी मांगनी होगी।
Refuting Rahul Gandhi's vote theft allegation, the poll body further accused the political parties of targeting voters while putting the onus on them.
मतदाता सूचियों में त्रुटियां साझा न की जाएं। मतदाता द्वारा अपना प्रत्याशी चुनने के 45 डेज के भीतर माननीय उच्च न्यायालय में चुनाव याचिका दायर न की जाए और फिर वोट चोरी जैसे गलत शब्दों का इस्तेमाल करके जनता को गुमराह करने का असफल प्रयास किया जाए तो यह भारत के संविधान का अपमान नहीं तो और क्या है।
The Election Commission's response came on a day that Rahul Gandhi launched the Voter Adhikar Yatra in Bihar to target the poll body over the raging issue of Special Intensive Revision SIR in the poll-bound state.
Rescue operations are still underway in northwest Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province after devastating flash floods hit the area a few days ago.
According to National Disaster Management Authority, over 390 people have died and 156 people have been injured in the catastrophic flash floods triggered by relentless rain. Officials say that several people are missing and many are feared trapped under rubble in remote villages.
Meanwhile, Pakistan's Prime Minister's coordinator for information on Khyber Pakhtunkhwa affairs, Ikhtiar Wali Khan, has expressed grave concern over the situation and hinted the possibility that as many as 1,000 people may have died in the flash floods in the area. He said that he saw extent of damage at the location while taking stock, and several villages have been wiped out completely.
Relief materials are being distributed in the flood-affected areas and a toll-free helpline has been opened for public. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa Chief Minister Ali Amin Gandapur has also said that the government will relocate people who are in flood-prone areas and also provide them with houses. The monsoon rainfall, which began on the 26th of June, has wreaked havoc in the country, killing at least 657 people and injuring 927 since then. The Meteorological Department has issued a heavy rain alert countrywide for August 17th to August 21st. It has also urged people in northwestern regions to take precautionary measures. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has warned Russia of consequences, including new sanctions.
And that is, of course, if no peace deal on Ukraine is reached. He said both Moscow and Kiev must make concessions, stressing that without compromise, there can be no peace. Hear this out.
Well, first of all, the Russians are already facing very severe consequences. There's not a single sanction that's been lifted. And not one. I mean, they're facing all the same sanctions that have been in place today. All the American support continues for Ukraine. And ultimately, look, if we're not going to be able to reach an agreement here at any point, then there are going to be consequences. Not only the consequences of the war continuing, but the consequences of all those sanctions continuing and potentially new sanctions on top of it as well. But what we're trying to do right now is end the war. And in order to end a war, you've got to give every opportunity that exists. You have to be open to any opportunity that exists to bring it about.
And Rubio added that while sanctions remain an option, levying tougher measures now could halt negotiations entirely. The Trump administration has already imposed wide-ranging sanctions alongside Europe, but it is weighing further action carefully. The Alaska summit between Presidents Trump and Putin ended without a ceasefire, despite Trump's earlier warning of very severe consequences for Moscow.
The European leaders reacted with caution. France, Germany, the UK and the European Commission pledged to keep sanctions in place until a just and lasting peace is achieved. French President Emmanuel Macron warned of Russia's tendency to break commitments. At the same time, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer praised Trump's diplomatic efforts, calling them the closest step yet towards ending Russia's war.
Russia's economy remains under strain, with oil and gas revenues its main source of war financing, falling 27% in July year on year. The US has already sanctioned nearly 200 tankers carrying Russian oil, though experts say another 359 vessels remain untargeted. They were not targeted, and analysts warn that cutting off these so-called shadow fleet shipments could cripple the Kremlin's war machine.
Meanwhile, Trump has credited his secondary tariffs on India for forcing Putin to the table, though his criticism on India's trade with Russia came under scrutiny when Putin highlighted a 20% increase in trade with the U.S. since Trump took office in January. For now, Trump has delayed further sanctions, but insists that the options remain open in the coming weeks. Now, the great and the good of the American central banking world are off to the Fed's annual Jackson Hole conference.
And this is for Fed Chair Jerome Powell. His appearance could hardly come at a more challenging moment for them. Take a look at this next report for more on this.
The much-awaited Alaska meeting is done, and now there is more uncertainty about what is next than there was before the summit. As US President Donald Trump kicks the can down the road once again, American central banking officials are off to the Fed's annual Jackson Hole conference. For Fed Chair Jerome Powell, his appearance could hardly come at a more challenging moment. The embattled Fed boss faces key questions as financial markets brace for another fiery week to come. The Fed Chair is already on the back foot, with his boss breathing down his neck. He needs to answer whether tariffs are having any impact on inflation. Is the job market really not getting any better? And the most important one, how divisive will the September meeting be? The Fed worries that tariffs will fuel a long-lasting bout of inflation. But the latest data raised a simpler question. Is there any sign that tariffs are lifting prices in the first place? Core inflation rose faster on a monthly basis, but not due to tariffs. Excluding cars, goods inflation was milder than it was in the prior months. Import prices are rising as tariffs have jumped over 10 times to above 20% on average from about 2% before Trump took office. While corporates are absorbing some of that, eventually someone has to pay, and usually it is the final consumer. Separately, it was only 2 weeks ago that Powell said he doesn't think the jobs market is getting any better. And then barely 48 hours later, big downward revisions to payroll suggested that the jobs market was weakening in fact. That data also showed the US economy was potentially flirting with recession. Powell's tug of war with the White House over Fed independence will be key as well. September's meeting is likely to be explosive, and investors will focus on what Powell has to say on rate cuts. A 0.25% September rate cut is fully priced by financial markets. However, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent wants a bold 0.5% cut. Will Powell push back? Where investors are more divided, it seems, is on what happens beyond September. There are many analysts also looking for a slightly more rapid string of cuts than market currently expect. And what will Powell say on that will take the center stage as the macro calendar in the US is relatively light. Business Bureau, WION World is one.
The blockbuster clash of game week 1 in the English Premier League ended with Arsenal winning 1-0 at Manchester United.
The Red Devils dominated the match, but it was the Gunners who triumphed courtesy of goalkeeping error.
Now, the two sides met on Sunday exactly 13 years after Robin van Persie made the headline-grabbing move from Arsenal to United and helped them to their last league title. The match began with a moment of silence for the late Diogo Jota. United looked impressive with new signings Brian Buemo and Matheus Cunha, causing early problems for the Arsenal backline. But it was the visitors who took the lead in the 13th minute from a set piece. Alte Beender who got the nod ahead of Andre Onana, failed to deal with Declan Rice's corner and allowed Ricardo Calafiori to nod home an easy goal.
Now that strike meant Arsenal have now scored 31 goals from corners since the start of last season, more than any other side in the league. United continued to push. Patrick Dorgu struck the post with a powerful effort, while Mbeumo and Acuna forced David Raya into a series of sharp saves. But for all their pressure, they could not find equalizer. Arsenal's new striker, Victor Gyökeres, had a quiet debut and was subbed off just after the hours. United's Benjamin Sesko also failed to make an impact off the bench. Despite the loss, United looked better than last season. They recorded 20-plus shots in a single game against Arsenal for the first time since their 8-2 win in August 2011.
Yes, because we showed it in a different way today. I think we did two things very well. One, to take the set piece and then react to especially mistakes. Some of them unnecessary, some of them unusual. But the way every single player reacted to that gives us the opportunity to win the game. If not, it's impossible. And that's about how we compete and how much we want it, as you said.
I think we proved today that we can win any game in the Premier League, especially against a great team like Arsenal, and we were the better team. So I'm happy with the players.
And the big development at this hour, Ukrainian President Zelensky has arrived in Washington, D.C.
Now, in a post on Twitter, Zelensky said he would be meeting his U.S. counterpart Trump on Monday. He thanked the U.S. president for the invitation. He's added that they all share a strong desire to end the war quickly and reliably. And the peace must be lasting, not like it was years ago.
And he was referring to the time in 2014 when Ukraine was forced to give up Crimea. Now, Zelensky's post follows a post by Trump in which he once again put the onus on Ukraine, saying Zelensky could choose to end the war with Russia almost immediately, but retaking Russian-occupied Crimea or joining NATO are off the table. And for more on this, we're now being joined by Susan Tehrani, who's joining us from New York over the phone line. Susan, we were just discussing this less than an hour ago, and the fact that Zelensky is making his way to the US, he's not very clearly, his language suggests that Crimea is on the table for him, and land concessions are not what he's looking at, but that seems to be the only way forward. Give us more on how you're reading this, anything more that you've picked up.
Yeah, so it appears that Zelensky had this desire or felt this need to put out this social media post. It's really shortly after, as you mentioned, President Trump made that statement that it's up to Zelensky to stop this war. I mean, what I read into it is that just under a tremendous amount of pressure Zelensky is right now going into this meeting, and so are European leaders, considering the fact that President Trump and Vladimir Putin seem to be somewhat on the same page, and Trump seems to see as the best path forward to some of the concessions that need to be made to Ukraine, and Zelensky is very concerned about this. And if you can see in his social media post, he keeps talking about independence. They're insisting that Ukraine must be involved in any deal. Of course, Ukraine will be, but it's this Ukraine's sovereignty is going to be front and center, and it's going to be very interesting to see whether or not there's going to be any kind of breakthrough, considering the fact that not only he made these statements that he can't change the lines of conflict and the lines of control based on the Ukrainian constitution. He made those comments prior to getting on the plane, and then once he's off the plane, he's making these comments about land and concessions as well. So it'll be interesting to see if there is any kind of middle ground that the United States, relaying Russia's message, can send to the Ukrainians and Europeans where it'll be desirable for them. They're supposed to meet, President Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky are supposed to meet at around 1 p.m. local time, Washington time, tomorrow afternoon, and then that meeting is going to be followed with the European leaders as well. So, we'll watch very closely.
Interesting. Absolutely. We know that Zelensky is here in Washington, D.C. Will we be waiting for all the European leaders, and when they come, and we got to see how we were talking about land concession and how the Europeans try and get the security guarantees on the topic on the table there.
Yeah, exactly.
All right,
Exactly.
Susan, thanks. Right, thanks so much for getting us the latest. It is going to be interesting to watch what happens next.
All right, well, that's all in World DNA today. We'll leave you with some climate stories making headlines across the world. Keep watching Beyond World is One.
India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at yowon.com.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening. As we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Beyond World is One with me, Diksha Bisla. Let's start with the headlines. Zelensky announces arrival in Washington for talks with Trump, shares desire to end the war quickly and reliably, but this time the peace should be lasting. US President Donald Trump says that Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky could choose to end the war with Russia almost immediately, but retaking Russian-occupied Crimea or joining NATO are off the table. Hamas rejects Israel's Gaza relocation plan, says it constitutes a new wave of genocide and displacement for hundreds of thousands of residents in the area. Tens of thousands of demonstrators hit streets in Tel Aviv, calling for an end to the war in Gaza and the release of hostages, marking one of the largest demonstrations in Israel since the start of the war in October of 2023. Exit polls show two right-wing candidates have qualified for Bolivia presidential runoff, topping the first round of elections on Sunday, ending 2 decades of leftist rule. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi announces arrest of 68 people overnight in Washington, D.C. as part of a federal crackdown on crime ordered by President Trump.
No fascist takeover must be stopped!
Indian consulate in New York celebrates India's 79th Independence Day with the annual India Day parade. New York City Mayor Eric Adams and Member of Parliament Satnam Singh Sandhu attend the event. Asian markets edge higher ahead of key U.S. interest rate decisions this week, while oil prices slipped as risk to Russian supplies seemed to fade a little. Jon Rahm wins his second consecutive LIV Golf season crown. The Spaniard lost to Sebastian Munoz in the playoffs in Indianapolis, but it was enough to secure the overall title.
Let's go, Rambo! Let's go! Come on! Let's go!
Tensions are escalating over Israel's new plan for Gaza City. The Israeli military has announced that it will launch a fresh offensive to seize control of the enclave's largest urban center. Well, as part of that move, Israel says it is preparing to relocate residents from combat zones, promising tent and shelter in the south to ensure their safety. But Hamas is condemning the plan, warning that It represents a further campaign of mass displacement and destruction. The group is dismissing the provision of temporary shelter as a deceptive cover for a far more brutal agenda. On the ground, residents of Gaza City were seen moving southward, leaving behind homes in fear of what the next wave of the offensive might bring.